The spread of electric cars is on the rise. In fact, the future looks electric. Vehicle manufacturers are already prepared for a future where petrol and gas vehicles are cleared off the streets. But are cities fully prepared for this revolution? Are cities well equipped with structures to sustain the multiplication of electric cars on streets? What about for car owners? Is the ease of use guaranteed? In this regard, it becomes important to check through some important factors, including the future of electric cars, advantages of electric cars over gas and petrol cars, factors affecting the spread of electric cars, and structures to maintain the spread of electric cars in cities. In a report taken by the Bloomberg NEF, they indicated that electric vehicles, or EVs, will constitute 10% of every other vehicle sales globally in 2025, and then will rise to 28% in 2030 and 58% in 2040. The reports state that electric vehicles currently constitute about 3% of car sales globally. Car brands are already envisioning the future to be digital, with streets saturated with electric vehicles. Toyota already announced their plans to generate half of their sales from manufacturing electric vehicles by 2025, which is 5 years earlier than they had previously estimated. Despite having their own battery-making operation already, Toyota will partner with Chinese battery manufacturers to meet this demand. In 2019, Volkswagen said they will spend more than $30 billion developing electric vehicles by 2023. They plan to reach a target of 1 million electric cars produced by the end of 2023, 2 years ahead of when they previously envisaged. They aim for electric vehicles to make up 40% of its global fleet by 2030. Ford, Volvo, Honda, Daimler, the parent company to Mercedes-Benz, and other manufacturing companies have unveiled their great plans toward introducing more electric vehicles in the streets. Volvo released their first electric vehicle in 2019, with a future plan to release a new electric vehicle every year for the next 5 years. But despite all of these future plans for electric vehicles, what advantage do they have for us? How are they more beneficial to us than the petrol and diesel cars? Well, electric cars are cost-effective and easier to maintain than internal combustion engine vehicles. One of the advantages is that they are cheaper to run. The cost of the electricity estimated to charge an electric vehicle is around 40% less than the cost of using petrol for a similar vehicle. The cost will be lower if you charge your EV from your solar PV system or at free charging stations. Another is that they are cheaper to maintain. An electric vehicle has fewer moving parts when compared to an internal combustion engine vehicle, and this will require a much easier and less frequent servicing. Also, the emission of gases through the exhaust of internal combustion engine cars is a severe cause of air pollution, which is toxic to mankind's health. The rise of electric vehicles will greatly reduce this, since electric vehicles are constructed with zero exhaust emissions. They only may create a degree of greenhouse gas emissions when charged from the electricity grid. Electric vehicles are also quieter than internal combustion engine vehicles and will really reduce noise pollution. They're also easy to power from renewable energy sources, which will lessen the effect of emissions on climate change. Renewable sources like solar, wind, and water power can be naturally used to power electric cars. Gasoline in internal combustion engine vehicles is non-renewable, on the other hand. To keep the flow of renewable energy steady, you can install solar panels in your homes to store charges and later be used to charge your electric vehicle. Electric cars are also on the rise because the cost of electricity is cheaper than gas. Therefore, the maintenance of electric cars is cost-effective. As beneficial as these electric vehicles may be to us and the climate, there are limitations they face which affects the interest of customers in purchasing one for themselves too, and they include the shorter range ability as compared to gas vehicles. Also, electric cars are usually more expensive than gas-powered cars, and recharging them really takes time. The most prominent of all is the access to finding charging stations. It's often difficult for car owners to find charging stations for their cars. The percentage of electric vehicles is increasing in cities today, and there are future plans to dominate the roads. But are these cities grounded with structures to maintain the fleet of these electric vehicles? In the US, nearly 1.2 electric car owners boast of energy efficiency, durability, and cheaper maintenance. But there's a huge area of concern they all have in common, and that is where to plug their vehicles in. Some states have access to adequate charging stations, but some don't have any at all. And according to Edison Electric Institute, the purchase of electric cars is growing exponentially at the rate of about 81% increase from 2017 to 2018. And in the subsequent years, the increase rate has been astronomical. But the only threat to this continuity is the lack of charging stations in some states. Just like a petrol car, with almost an empty tank without any reserve, plying a lonely road very far away from any fueling station, the driver will experience range anxiety, wondering how far he is to drive before he reaches the nearest fueling station, or before his car finally comes to a halt. Such is the case for electric cars in cities short of adequate charging stations. As many states are embracing the technology of electric vehicles so as to reduce carbon emissions and tackle climate change, it becomes more necessary to construct enough charging stations. For electric vehicles used for short-range traveling, you can plug them in at home daily. Ford, the manufacturer of the electric Mustang, says the new 2021 models will be designed to cover a range of up to 300 miles once fully charged. This is in a view of improving the economy and to make electric vehicles thrive in areas that lack enough public charging stations. California has the highest number of charging stations. From the most recent count, there are more than 22,600 stations there. The state also has the highest number of electric vehicles, about 500,000. North Dakota has about 36 charging stations, and Alaska has about 26. Since it's certain that the future is electric and cities should be prepared to welcome multiples of electric cars, then structures should be made to sustain their spread. Currently, there are about thousands of electric vehicle charging stations open to the public in the US with many plugs, but the country and the world will need thousands more to sustain the rise of electric cars. Automakers and charging companies should implement means to increase them. As an electric car owner, you can invest in a home charging station or use the public networks. Public charging stations have higher kilowatt capacities than home chargers, and they quickly recharge batteries on new electric vehicles that can travel 300 or more miles on a single charge. As more electric vehicles are sold, more fast chargers will be needed in public stations, especially for people who live in apartment buildings who are unable to have home charging stations. Tesla has been the leading company producing electric cars in the world. They own their own private network of fast charging stations. They have a network of about 1,971 charging stations with 17,467 outlets worldwide. More public charging stations will allow better automakers to compete with Tesla, and this, generally, will facilitate the rise of electric cars in cities.